winging it, but we're live, and it's a good way to start is by winging it. So happy to have Kelly back today again. There's never too much Kelly, and the more I've learned over the last 10, 11 months with Kelly has just been extraordinary. And I know we're both focused on trying to get best practices out to people. Oh, here we go. Our third guest, Todd. Hey, Todd. I didn't know, but I'm glad I found out. How you doing? We were just talking, me and Kelly, and just for your information, Kelly's been my co-anchor for like 10 months here. Was here yesterday. So really great compliment to our conversation on the phone. I mean on Zoom. So Todd, why don't you share a little bit about who you are? Today's word is educate. I was so thoroughly impressed with you and what you do. I couldn't wait to share it with our great audience. And the audience, feel free, chat's open. Love to hear your suggestions, become more relevant from our standpoint to give you some quality takeaways. So Todd, take it away.
Hey, thanks for having me. I have to be fashionably late. Forgive me. Clicking the wrong link, story of my life. Anyhow, great to see both of you. And hi to your audience as well. Describing me is pretty easy. I'm on my third career so far. First one was Big Buck Consulting with Andersen and Ernst & Young. Then I got lucky and the real fun started, as if those weren't wonderful beginnings. I figured out what I wanted to do, which was to study business, especially relationships within business from a very different. And so I went and got a PhD at Texas A&M in org behavior and became a business school professor for a long time, and briefly a dean as well, until, as you know, life just has its own plan for you. And in my case, I thought I'd retire an old crotchety, happy professor, and life had other plans. It just kind of started with phone calls. Speaking started small and local. It grew more frequent. It grew to a larger geography, and then making courses online for LinkedIn started, and writing books and giving speeches. I eventually retired at 42. I'm now 52 and have been solopreneur, educator, writing books, giving speeches, making courses ever since.
Wow, that's fantastic. And some people never have one really good career, let alone three. And I think you make such a wonderful point is life was meant to take you where you need to go if you're open to get on board. And I think that's where some people don't pivot. They may be satisfied, but are they truly fulfilled? And is that sustainable? And does your future look bright based on what you plan on doing in your future? So, Kelly, why don't you chime in, share a little bit for Todd, and everybody else knows you for sure, and then we'll get back to comments.
Yeah. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're tuning in from. I always like a double header back to backs, and great to be here with Todd and learn and get educated about what you do. A good word for this today, because so many questions. Like, I love that you're a 5-time TEDx speaker, which I'm like, I need to know how to do that. Because I know so many people that it's like, you would be so rad on a TEDx talk, but they're like, I have no idea how to do it. In any event, a great word. Interested to what people have to say, because I think at the core of what this show is educating people, sharing information. Right? We're sharing knowledge. We're sharing our experience. Which is a way to educate. So I think, that's amazing. And there are so many, incredible tools these days, speaking of LinkedIn and all their library of courses that you can take. And that's what I did during 2020. Like, I took every free course I could take. I was on, I don't know how you pronounce it, if it's Udemy or Udemy. I took so many courses and was able to get into coursework with other honestly, very major organizations and do group work with them, which I always think is a great opportunity when you've got downtime, like, and you're trying to figure things out. It's like, take some coursework and see what reignites your fire. Because there's always something to learn. I mean, there just is, and especially in this world of technology and our reach of what we're able to do. Like, there's no reason not to continually learn something. And excuse me, I'm a smidge hoarse this morning. I was at the Jason Aldean concert last night, so which was great, by the way.
Nice.
Well, that's it's really nice to have a show where people get on who are already going places, already on a journey, and have had great experiences in the past, which then support future experiences in the future. So I think building on success in anything, and I love what Todd said, is he all got started locally.
Hmm.
Right? You might be talking to 10 people in a library. But you know what? They're helping you learn how to talk.
Yes.
You're already thinking your future has already arrived because you determine that's where you want to go. But the guys who founded Google, when they interviewed them, they said, what was surprising? He says, we were so happy we didn't get discovered for 6 months after we launched because we were totally horrible. Right? So you don't want that maximum exposure and putting it on the line. So let me just recognize Elizabeth. Elizabeth was here yesterday. Great to see you, Elizabeth.
Hey, Elizabeth.
Nice for you to meet Todd too. Debbie is here. Debbie's just one of the most wonderful ladies. Is championing the monarch butterfly migration to Mexico and is going out there again this year, and has been planting milkweed and everything else. And she's also involved with using butterflies to help 4 and 5-year-old kids, learn better. The only person who's educated, the one who has learned how to learn and change, Carl Rogers. Great quote, Debbie. Thank you so much for being here. So Todd,
Yes,
the word of the day is educate. What does that initially mean to you?
Well, it's funny, we used to talk forever about continuous learning and things of that nature. Lifelong learning, that was another one. And it's a great idea, and I think we should all take it very serious, but it's only in the last 20, 30 years that we've actually started putting tech out there easily available to most everyone that truly makes that an option that's not difficult. You mentioned LinkedIn Learning and Udemy. These are great platforms, but just, YouTube and many other places, Khan Academy, there's an endless series of places. Don't even get me started about the gazillions, that's a word, of blogs that are out there that you can learn from.
Amen.
Experts have so many tools to share what they know that there's just no excuse to sit around and not be learning something. So when I think educate, I'm thinking broad thoughts these days. Just yesterday, LinkedIn, who I'm most closely associated with, I love my friends at LinkedIn, they've been getting a lot of press with their backing of interesting new uses of AI and how it's disrupting education. And in fact, a lot of people, because of cost, are starting to question college at its foundation. Is that worth it when there's things like Udemy and LinkedIn Learning and certificate programs and workshops and applied learning opportunities that are faster and cheaper? I can't answer that question. I can tell you it's fascinating, and I'm very happy to be part of the emerging broader definition of education.
Well, that's fantastic because, what I found is you have to get better just to stay even, right? Because the world's changing, technology's changing, everything is changing. And I think that's why there's so much dislocation, so much division, because not everybody could speed to the other side. Not anybody, a lot of people never wanted to leave the side they're on.
Sure.
Right? So, but what has improved is peer-to-peer access. Right? Where before it was centralized, you'd go to a university, you'd go to wherever it was you had to go to in order to receive something, which was also cost prohibitive. People who couldn't didn't have the transportation, didn't have the wherewithal to have 4 years or whatever it was, or a doctor. And now with self-education, everybody can get to where they want to go sooner, because in most curriculums, there's like 80% of stuff you wouldn't choose, or 60%. And so now I'm spending money on something I don't even at least appreciate.
Yeah.
And now I got to take 3 times longer because I'm only taking 40% of the stuff I do. Why not have it become a buffet? Right? Where it's up to you to choose your courses. But here's the thing. Now you don't need intermediaries. You can go direct to the educators, and the educators don't have to go through the institutions because maybe their book isn't accepted. Maybe there's, legacy issues that you're never going to overcome. So I think really greasing the wheels of change and jumping on board and learning to change as you start to accept the change. So with that, we've got William Gay here, who I just connected with today. If you're not moving forward and growing, you're sliding backward and growing stagnant. So Kelly, what's your thoughts on all these new revelations?
Yeah, I mean, so many, and one that came up, of course, anytime we say the AI, don't want to say the words AI, the letters AI, it tends to get people to perk up a little bit in a way of not really understanding, because people are like, oh, AI is going to take over the world. And it's like, it's not, but there's parts of it that I do think are, for me, that make me a little nervous. I think with education, though, the one aspect, and yeah, you can take anything sitting in front of your computer for the most part, whether or not it's a paid course or free courses that are out there. But there's a few things to consider, because like on LinkedIn, as an example, there's a lot of people that claim to be expert at certain topics, and it's like, but are they though? Because there's a lot of false information out there, for one, and it's about how knowing to weed through that. But two, I think the importance of education in the institution is all about being social with people and having human connection and working together and collaborating. Like, I think it goes so much more than just the classroom of what you gain from that situation. Look at us getting all fancy and moving around today.
I just fell out and then showed up again.
Hi.
Just testing. Well, you look just as good or better than you did before. So
yes.
So okay, now we got the three in a row. I'm always thinking why and what. But yeah,
Sorry
Kelly, you make so many great points, because all these conversations we're having, and like I say, this show's been going on 364 out of the last 365 days.
So crazy.
You really pick up nuances and different facets of feedback. In a lot of cases, there's a lot of producers, but not a lot of consumers who produce, right? Because they think they've got whatever they've got, and that's what they got. But how do you teach when you're not also maintaining a student status?
Yeah.
How do you not participate in a show that you'd like to present to, but not be part of?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I think you have to. I mean, you mentioned all the experts that are clamoring to call themselves experts these days, Kelly. It's just a great comment. The truth is, the market is real, and the more you share, the more you'll know exactly how you stack up when people react to what you got. And my comment about feedback is, I love it when they agree and bring up an example. I love it when they disagree and go, but did you consider, and what about this exception? All of that, and I say this selfishly and joyously, all of that makes me better at what I do. And I'm grateful every time they speak up. It's like I'm constantly refining my ability to help by having my experiences combined with the endless feedback they keep giving me that makes me actually stronger. So I'm quite grateful for that.
I love that. We were just talking about that yesterday. About being adaptable and flexible, is knowing that, like, our way of thinking, or the way that we see something and how we maybe have educated on it or taught people on it, and then somebody giving you that feedback to say, hey, have you ever thought of it this way? And being able to go, no, I didn't. Now I need to adjust and adapt, and taking that in as like an okay thing, instead of like, hey, why are you trying to poke a hole in my thing? You do have to be open-minded to continue to learn.
Sure.
Well, absolutely. And I think the benefit that I've noticed with the three of us today is we had significant careers and experience in different areas. I know Kelly's a CMO, and I'm an entrepreneur who owned a lot of quality businesses. And your situation where you're on your third wave is, once you make that pivot, making the next pivot comes even easier. right? And at the same time, now you have to be the new kid on the block. When I walked into LinkedIn, they didn't give me a roadmap. You know, I just had, and most people make the mistake is they take where they've been and bring it over here.
Sure.
And they have a buy, ask, or take attitude because that's what the physical world is, right? You're not going to make a trip without hoping to get a positive result. Where here, it's more relationship building, trust building. And it really takes a bigger adjustment for people who have been in more of a entitled position. And I think what Todd really characterizes is the ability to stay humble and have humility, right? And that's why I always introduce everybody in the audience. Everybody should be seen and heard. And I know how I appreciate someone saying, oh, Don's here, or I know Don, or whatever. And it's no different going into a restaurant where everybody knows you, slaps you on the back. And after a while, the food's good, but the company's even better. So with that, before we swing it back to Todd, let's bring it back to Debbie. Get better to stay even, for sure. Can't say enough. Harvey's here. Can't say enough. Harvey, me, and Kelly are like the dynamic trio, I guess we'd call ourselves. And Harvey's been doing this for about 6 months with the show, but also Harvey has gravitated, elevated to the franchise show he's doing every Tuesday right after this show. And then Kelly has the awesome journey she's doing with Christy Howard. So this has just been a beautiful runway. I can tell you, I was on Paul's show the other day, and you know, this was the first time he was on. So it's just wonderful to see. We're talking about educate. Students come in here and then fly off, but don't leave here. You know, and wouldn't that be great if you could have 1 foot there and 1 foot there, you know, and not have to leave something to find something. And in most cases, it's complement. You know, it's not absolute, you know, and that's what I'm saying. Kelly, Todd, myself have so much information in so many other areas that don't directly apply to this. But a lot of the principles and experiences can be transferred to it.
You know, you mentioned a really interesting idea, Don. You talked about how after you make that jump, it gets easier the next time. And I love to tell people that because I get questions all the time about how did you get started as a speaker, for example, or I've got an idea for a book. How do I actually get started and finish a book? There's no perfect answer to those questions, but I can tell you this: it takes time. You're good before you're great, and in every endeavor I've been involved in, you are good before you're great. You meet more and more people just like the two of you who help make you better along your journey, and then you keep getting better and you keep getting better. You have to take a risk. You have to be willing to fail. Mistakes and being imperfect define the journey. And if you don't like what I just said, then you're fooling yourself when you talk about your love of continuous learning and your desire to maybe do something creative or entrepreneurial, because Don's correct. It is going to be easier the second time, but that does mean you have to endure some serious learning and stress as you make your way from path A to path B, for sure.
Well, that's great. And really quick, Todd, you're talking about a book. So what's your latest book?
Oh, thank you. Set up, sir. Look at that. I decided to write a fun business fable about some misfit monsters who had to learn some things about teamwork and leadership. And it's being received pretty well so far. I'm excited.
Well, that's great. I don't want anybody to come on and not have a book that they can't share, because, you know, it's not what they do that matters. It's who they are. Right. And that's what I always look at as the qualifier to be on the show. Is it a good person? Does the person have a heart? And does the person understand? And just like Bob Burke's going to be here a week from today, you know, I started listening to it again just to get more into the story of the Go-Giver. Is that so mirrors our theme here or backdrop, which is to give, because that's how you prime the pump, right? That's how you can get things going. If you'll wait for someone to give, you know, why not be on the other side where people are waiting for you instead of you waiting for them? So Kelly, what's your new thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so many great things out of all of what was just said, and I think, you know, the thing about once you try it once and then you try it again, you're not as afraid. It's because you've realized that, hey, I just did it that time, you get more confident. And not afraid to fail. I think failure, it's one of those things, we talked about it here many a times. It's not a bad word. It's not a four-letter word. It's part of life. And when you embrace it in that way, and I'll use a very highlighted version of an example I've used before. A great boss that I had once, I was elevated into a position that I didn't think I was ready for at the time. And I was like, holy shit, like I'm super impressed or happy, but like I don't know how to run, marketing USA. And he's like, well, good, neither do I, but you'll figure it out. And when I did make a mistake, and it was pretty epic, like at first it was one of those like, ooh, didn't see that one coming. But when I went into his office and said, hey, here's what happened. Here's what I think we can do, and here's what we probably need to implement to keep it from happening again.
Sure.
And he's like, and so what's the problem? And I'm like, well, that's a pretty epic F up. And he was like, no, it's not. I know you're doing your job. And that's such a mind shift when you're like, I didn't think of it that way. And I think, you made such a great, it's feedback. And we say that a lot too. And it's part of life. If you think like you just said, Todd, if you think that's not going to happen, like I don't know where you think you are, because it's just not reality. And to embrace those fails, any person that's on, whether it's LinkedIn or anywhere else. And there was a guest on earlier, I think this week, that said, hey, I did this big talk with an amazing organization, and people are like, whoa. And he's like, but that took me 6 years to set up.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't happen overnight. People think like, how did you get so successful? Well, it didn't happen overnight. There was a lot of failures behind whatever happened before they got to where they are. And I think there can be a little bit of being behind a computer screen. Sometimes it's like, people, you still have to put in the work. Like, it's not going to come falling on your desktop. Like, you have to do a lot of things. And especially if you're a solopreneur, an entrepreneur trying something different, and that you're not completely educated on, you have to do a lot of learning and failing along the way to figure it out. So I think the action part, a lot of times people forget. It's like, it doesn't happen for you, and nobody got there without busting their tail and again, making a lot of mistakes.
Well,
So I've made plenty. If you have another few hours, I'll tell you my biggest mistake.
Right.
well, actually, there's a gentleman out in Bangkok, and his last name is Stotts, and he's had a show where that he's had, I don't know, 500, 600, 700 episodes, and the topic is, what was my biggest failure?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And people come on and share. Andrew Stotts is his name.
Mm-hmm.
But to address what Kelly said, is so many people don't understand your future is not defined by your past, right? And also, when it comes to pivoting, at a certain point, if you do it well enough and often enough, you look for ways to pivot instead of being forced to pivot. I mean, sometimes you got to get knocked off your horse to get on the next horse and maybe be on a better trail. But it's also, how much expectation do you have for your future? I mean, how does someone wait 6 years without knowing it might take 6 years? And the other thing about feedback, because that's what I love about the audience, is it's like a polishing wheel. If you lean into it, they'll start to show you your rough edges and your imperfections. And, just like a comedian goes to comedy clubs to get their act together before they go to a major venue. And I think if it works for the most successful people, they say, act as if you are and you'll become. With that said, I'll go right back to Beverly. Beverly, yes, mistakes, Todd, and fail forward. Harvey comes back with not what they do, not who they are, but who they become. I still remember, and we quote that one. Harvey also says, we'll always have a foot in this hour of empowerment. I'm thankful for the education. It continues and never ends. Future, failure is the key to education. Failure is a series of signposts designed to keep you on the path. And then Beverly comes back with, yes, Kelly, I think it's something like it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. But here's one thing I'll add before turning it over to Todd. It takes what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be what it takes also, right? And if you time out on yourself, so where are you going tomorrow and what are you going to do and who are you going to do it with? So who's really cutting your nose to spite your face? And I think at a certain point, if you love what you're doing, if you enjoy what you're doing, there's no fire, right? If you're reading a great book, you don't start speeding ahead. Maybe you'll start, savoring what you're doing, because that's what life is what you're doing, where you're at right now. It's not the stuff you can't forget about the past, the fear of what will probably happen sometime in the future.
Yeah.
It steals the moment. People want to be on both sides of the fence at the same time, and they find themselves nowhere. So, Todd, one thing I'd like to ask you, I was so impressed with how many courses you have out there. And I know there's a lot of people probably thinking of, how do I do a course? Maybe you can help them.
Yeah.
I would love to try. First, I'm going to back up and mention something. A little while ago, you talked about you can have expertise. You also have to have substance as a person. I love that comment. And it feeds into our discussion of feedback here and learning from mistakes, facing fears. These things all tend to go together. And this is so fun to share. And I love to humble myself and make fun of myself to get people to understand some of these ideas. Here's an example to validate your comments, both of you. New book came out, Dancing with Monsters. I got a new keynote. I started doing that recently, first time live on stage in front of people about 2-3 months ago. And it went well. It wasn't standing O. It went really well, which for the first time you do a speech is great.
Yes.
And you have to be the kind of person that others are okay giving that feedback we keep talking about too. It's not just that we all have to recognize we need feedback. You got to be a person others are kind of okay with approaching and giving that feedback to. And after I gave that speech and had wonderful applause, I was doing a book signing, a lot of people coming over, no less than 10 of them told me politely and kindly feedback I need to hear, which was that I speak ridiculously fast when I'm on stage, not for my standards, but for my new stuff. When I'm working it out, I really do have an old habit from long ago that comes up, and I don't think about it because I haven't been doing it for years. I'm kind of a polished guy at this point, but with the new speech, old guy comes out. And these people gave me the kindest feedback ever to say, that was amazing. I worked hard to keep up with you. Don't make me work so hard to keep up with you. You're speaking so fast. It was delightful to be reminded that I needed to do that if I wanted to connect and help these people. So I love sharing that regarding our feedback conversation. Now, quick thought, Dawn, you said, what can you tell people who want to make courses? I'll tell you to make them. It used to be different because access to a market was hard and the cost of production was hard. Today, no. For 12 or so years, I've been working with LinkedIn, a little bit with Udemy as well. Really like them as well. And the work I did with LinkedIn mostly was in their studios. So there's a director and all these tech people doing all kinds of things for the talent. And these days, I still do that on occasion, but mostly I've built my own studio, create my own content. I look for a gap in the market that's in my expertise. I write something. I hire a small crew to do all the tech things in here, in this very office where I'm sitting right now, and we shoot something and then do post and add some graphics and submit it for consideration. But my point to you is, even if it feels daunting, and it should, to get into one of the monsters out there like LinkedIn Learning, which is hard because they've been very, very successful, there are places like Udemy, Udemy. You should check them out, and others who will be happy to take your course about whatever it is you're an expert in and give you a chance to experience what it means to try and promote that, get eyeballs on it, and hear some student feedback. Even if you're just talking about your blog or YouTube as a place to begin, there is no real barrier today. The cost of tech to do a decent, let's call it a decent production, is so low, a few $100 at the low end, 5-10 at the high end, 5-10,000 if you really want to build a world-class studio, but you don't have to start there. There's just no excuse, Don. There's people say they want to do this, and today more than ever before, I say, what is stopping you? Start recording. Yeah. Maybe there's a stopgap and you go after people like me and say, let me show you this. Can you give me some feedback? How's this looking before I do a final shoot? Great. I'd love to do that for you. I've done it for a bunch of people, but there is no excuse. So you should start now.
So really, one of the things me and Kelly always talk about is we've done so much live, is repurposing the content we've already produced, but put it in a context that's, fills that gap, because just like what we're doing today, there's so much spontaneous enthusiasm, excitement in what we're saying, that's hard to script
Yeah.
or act on and then deal with editing. So, I think, and then I know shorts are getting more and more popular all the
Sure.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you mentioned you have like 40 courses out there right now that people can actually access and engage.
That's awesome.
I think I'm pushing 50. I've got 44 at LinkedIn and another 5 or 6, something like that, on Udemy right now. There's just no short. If you want to know what it's like to make a course, by the way, this is not a secret. You ready? If you really want to experience LinkedIn learning for free, many libraries in the US would be happy to let their patrons access LinkedIn learning for free. That is a massive education, not just about the content areas the experts are speaking about, but about what they're doing to craft a course and how they're doing it, which you can look at with a different set of eyeballs.
Mm-hmm.
It's right there for you. Just go sign up.
Well, that's terrific information, Todd. And, that's what makes this show worth doing, is the value it can bring people who don't know. It's the fear of the unknown that's a bigger fear than actually experiencing what you were fearing. So I think if we can move people to action, move people to get rid of limited beliefs or something like, oh, that's going to cost $1 million or that's going to do this. In the meantime, one has to ask themselves, well, what are you doing while you're waiting to get ready for that? Mm-hmm. And if it's nothing, then why not look at it as a learning curve before one looks at it as an earning curve? I think that's so essential, because even when people came to work for me, I always said, it's not how much you make here, it's who you become here, right? LinkedIn's the same way. It doesn't owe you anything. You came here because you had a need or a want, or something wasn't working, so you decided to make that change.
Hey, you just said a phrase, and boy, do I love a good phrase that really resonates with me. It's a learning curve before it's an earning curve. Is that something you picked up somewhere, or is that an original from you?
I'm sure I picked it up somewhere, but I don't think it was a quote.
I was going to say, we don't know where Don's original quotes end and where his routines begin.
He's been mopping it up for years. Listen, I want people to hear this, because y'all are being very nice to me, and I'm grateful for that. But here's the truth. I've got all kinds of monumental failures in my career. 3 things maybe that have gone really well, and a lot of people as a result know me, and they go, wow, good for you. You've done something. You're successful, whatever that means. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm successful because of hard work and learning through a whole lot of setbacks, screw-ups, mistakes, and failures that most of you are unaware of. It's so vital that you hear that, because if you want to get through that learning curve, you got to start to value learning, not just the envisioned success you want down the line. That's important too, but much more day-to-day, immediate, is to value learning. Otherwise, you're never going to get that dream movie you were playing in your head about ultimate success.
Well, I think, someone who has reached success and admits that what it took to get there. And again, it's all how you visualize or perceive something. If you're your own best friend, if you think more of yourself than anybody else in a quality way, not a elitist way, you expect it, right? I mean, when you go into the arena, you expect a challenge. You expect to learn something, and if you're there knowing that, it's only thinking you got it made and something didn't work out, and what happened? It's got to be something besides me. Mm-hmm. If I don't know a thing about what I'm doing, but I know enough to watch, to listen. Actually, when I got on LinkedIn the first time, I didn't post for a very long time. I just commented on other people's posts. Mm-hmm. Everybody was gravitating where I could see who they were. And eventually you get seen by the people you want to be with. Mm-hmm. Instead of just opening a door and letting everybody in and then figure who do you want, how do you get rid of the people that aren't relevant. So I think sometimes slow is a speed most people don't accept. And sometimes you got to put it in neutral. Sometimes you got to throw it into reverse, right? And why not? Because the worst thing to do is when you're going the wrong direction is speed up. And that's what most people do. So Kelly,
Yeah, I mean, so many great things. Todd, man, I could hang with you all day. Maria said in the comments something about if you should test something on Facebook before going out, and I guess, and this will definitely be something Todd can swing back around to as well. I think it depends on what you're putting out. I mean, I have business friends who, like, they have a new concept or idea, and what they do is they reach out to people in their community who they respect that are in business and say, hey, would you mind, participating in an advisory board, if you will, where I present and you guys give your feedback. I mean, that's one way to do it, because I think sometimes when you give things to people who know you very well,
Yep.
which is fine, but their input could be a little bit biased. So I think it's people from a business perspective that you need to get, like, I know that this person is really great in sales, so I want to get their input because I think this portion of my project maybe is a little weak, whatever it is. I think it really depends on what you're taking to market, on where you take it to, and where you test it and who you test it with. So I think there's too many variables to say, well, yeah, if you've got a product, go to Facebook. And I'm not a big Facebooker because I feel like it's the abyss when it comes to ads and such. But again, I think it really matters on what you're bringing to market. So I don't know, Todd, what are your thoughts on
Well,
that?
start early and start cheap and
Yes.
spread widely. No matter, I'm a purveyor of ideas as opposed to products, although I do sell courses and books. But the truth is, you don't know how others are going to perceive what you're working on and what you're thinking. You think you do, and I promise you, with love and respect, you're wrong. The only
Yes.
question is whether you're wrong a little or a lot. So let me make that very clear for you. About half the time, I'm not a prolific poster at this point for a lot of reasons, but I'm still very active for the most part on LinkedIn. Half the time I go, I like this thing I'm working on, this paragraph or this story, whatever, and I post it and I'm right. And a lot of people agree and they have something to say and it's a vibrant conversation. And then the other half the time I'm like, I've got something great to say. I like this. Can't wait for the conversation. And I post it out there and it's just almost crickets and no one kind of gets it or wants to talk about it for whatever reason. And that is normal. Now, experts will tell you you can get better and improve your hit rate. But the point is, you don't always know how others are going to react. So if you're, for example, in my world, writers and speakers, they often have mastermind groups. I've never loved that term, by the way, but they'll have groups of people who are empowered with expert eyes, empowered to speak the truth. That's what you want in great feedback, not affirmations. Let me say that again, not just affirmations. That can be actually problematic if it's not accompanied by critical analysis as well.
Yes.
One of the greatest things that ever happened to me, I'll tell you both this, just to prove that I mean it when I say this. This is an anecdote from a story I use in the current keynote for Dancing with Monsters. There was a guy who came up to me after a speech probably around 10 years ago to give me a piece of feedback that I promise you I desperately needed to hear. And he told me that as I was running around stage, I get animated because I never kind of stand behind a podium, and I get sweaty and excited. I fix my glasses a lot. And he said, I'm very sorry to tell you this. I can't believe I'm just giving you the punchline to the story. He said, I can't resist telling you this. You don't use your index finger like most people. And I paused and I said, oh, I could just hear it coming. I was like, oh no, don't tell me. He said, yeah, Todd, today you gave your audience the bird about 50 times.
That's so good.
And I said, are you serious? This is true story. True story. My point to anyone listening is that you too, just like the three humans talking at you right now, do not perfectly understand how others view you and your ideas and your work. Endeavoring to close that gap through dialogue and empowering others to give some useful feedback is not perfect, but is a great way to close that gap.
Amen. And I think, just going on the thing about not, you don't know your audience the way you think you do. And I've seen this with so many clients too that do this. They get so wrapped into their product, service, or thing, because it's their baby. They love it and they know how it needs to be taken to market. And it's like, no, we're getting all this feedback and it's the same feedback over and over. And you're not adjusting and adapting to what your audience is trying to educate you on. And I think it's difficult for some people to take the feedback in and really apply it, because they can be offended by it. And it's like, when one person says something, now when you're doing a speaking and they're like, hey, you were flipping everybody off, which that's classic. Of course you're going to listen to it. But there's also times where one person gives you some feedback and you take it negatively. It doesn't mean that you need to change anything. It just means you need to pay attention. I'm gonna file that one away. So if I start hearing it over and over and over again, hey, guess what? I need to address something.
That's great. You're not just looking for one-off comments, but you're trying to do this kind of regularly so you can look for patterns. That's a great insight.
Absolutely. And it's almost like polling over time.
Yeah.
Right. Where you start, like you say, putting that on the shelf. But if there's 3, 4 of those, they come on the table maybe. And I think what is highlighted by what Todd has been able to express is if anything you do is a little bit more fun, a little bit more whimsical, then the engagements are not as dramatic or as serious. And when you admit your mistakes, so other people will know that, hey, you're no different than them. Everybody came in the world with nothing. The worst you can do is break even, they say. So, and you can change. So that's the important thing. But I know if Todd's having fun, the people around him are feeling more relaxed, more comfortable.
Sure.
If you're like pointing your finger and shouting at people and demanding stuff, well, they're going to create fear, distance, and intimidation. Where if you just, my motto has always been, whatever is best goes next, right? And I'm always looking to get better. So anybody who can give me a hint, even on Wheel of Fortune, I always say I'd buy so many vowels before I try to solve the puzzle. And that's really what having whatever group, the 4 or 5 people you really know, trust you, love you, and appreciate you, is you can put it all on the table and say, hey, what do you see with your fresh eyes and ears, right? Or you can take it to a stranger, maybe even better off, who has no skin in the game, and ask, Todd, please.
I was just say, you mentioned mistakes, and I'm like, I've already made at least one. We know about the tech mistakes I made in this conversation, but procedurally, content-wise, there's at least one. Debbie, a stranger, to use your label, Debbie says that I was speaking too quickly. I need to speak slower. I busted again when I was talking about free resources. I mentioned, Debbie, the library system in the U.S. It is still the case, I believe, that a lot of people who are members of certain libraries, if not many, many libraries, can get free access as a library patron to LinkedIn Learning. That's all I was trying to convey. I believe that's still a program they support strongly, and I hope you'll check it out for sure. But boy, is that apropos. I'm over here trying to be an educator, and I'm making mistakes by doing something not productive, speaking too quickly, and a wonderful, brave stranger points that out. Thank you, Debbie.
Well, I think that's so important, because I was going to say the same thing. When someone gives you advice, they did take the time, the thought, and the effort, and take the initiative. No different if your shoelaces were untied.
Sure.
No matter who the stranger was, if they said, hey, by the way, and that saved you from falling or embarrassing yourself, you would love to hear that. And even if someone told you today is Tuesday, if you're confident it's Friday, no matter what they said, how they said, it's not going to change how you're thinking, right? And I think it's giving yourself enough credit to be at least an equal partner in receiving feedback. And that's where you have to be gracious, whatever it is, just like showing up on the show. Someone took an hour of their time, their thought, their energy to be here. The obligation is to make it rewarding so they come out with a positive, and maybe enough to come back tomorrow and learn a little bit more from a new person. And it's always your music, not your words, that people are really listening to. So before I jump off, let me catch up here. Maria, is it an idea to test a program? Okay, we talked about that. Todd said that again. Where is the free access? We just covered that. Beverly is excellent, great. Let's keep going to it. I'm at the bottom now. I actually love this one's energy. We have to talk. Here's one from Debbie, I believe. Everyone you will ever meet knows something you don't, Bill Nye. And everybody we meet, others with brilliance. That's the fun. It's like a new person just showed up in my life, a new thought, a new direction. And it does, even for a second, make you think, and maybe you get back to where you were, or maybe you think, I got to think about this a little bit more. So Kelly, what's your thoughts?
I mean, first of all, I love the fact that Todd speaks faster than I do, which is incredible, because that's one of the things I have to remind myself at times. Because when I get excited, it's like my word count goes through the roof. And if I can see an audience though, or the person I'm talking to, I can see it happening, because you can see them almost going like, you're throwing this at me way too fast. Is that I have to remind myself to slow down when I'm really excited or pumped about something. So same thing. And it's just kind of, for me, it was great to have someone who speaks faster than me on an occasion.
I'm here for you.
God bless you. And so many things about learning that have been coming in education. Of course, life is an education. I mean, life teaches us things sometimes that we never wanted to learn. I've certainly learned things I I would never wish for someone else to have to learn. And I love the thing about LinkedIn live courses in the library. And those are things I think with people, and kind of reiterate what I was saying earlier, there are so many courses, and Udemy, and I have no connection with them at all, but they offer some amazing either discounts or free programs sometimes. And when I'm saying free programs, they're normally like hundreds of dollars and you can get them for free. So if you're not familiar with them, do look them up and check them out, because they do have some great courses. I'm always into constant learning, and because information changes so fast. I mean, LinkedIn as an example, doing LinkedIn Lives, when people ask me about it, it's like, I literally put a date on the calendar and we were like, we're doing it. And we knew it wasn't going to start off perfect. I will never go back to my first episode and watch it with Dawn. But you also have to be a real critic for yourself to learn. I did watch episodes to see like, oh gosh, when I say too much, or because I've always done marketing and sales and training salespeople. So when they would do their presentations, I would have to say the same thing, like, slow down, man, or hey, you need to be more you and less of the logic. Like, you're just regurgitating the content, which leaves people feeling flat. And it's the same thing when you're on camera, but being able to know, like, I need to take that information. Like, hey, you seemed to, I know people who have amazing content and speak very well, but they don't come across well. But you can still have those hard conversations. Like you said, I always feel like, how kind that you took the time to tell me something that will make me better at a craft, or it's constructive criticism, but I don't even think it's criticism. It's just like, hey, I want you to be better. And it's a gift. I mean, and I guess if you look at it that way, it feels a little better, because some people can be stung by the feedback. And that was originally one of the things doing LinkedIn Lives that I was nervous about, because I thought, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle judgment very well. It's a trigger for me. I was in a horribly emotionally abusive relationship, and I thought, man, if people are pulling me apart, because they do that on some of their platforms. It's never happened here, which I think is pretty incredible to say over a 10-month period. And I'm not just talking for me. I've never seen one nasty comment to anyone in the comments, because I think LinkedIn has been very blessed to the fact of people have come back here and have stayed here and choose it to be their social media platform, because they're tired of the trolls or the unrealistic things within other platforms. You're seeing these lives of people. And to go back to one of your points that you made earlier, Todd, that just came to me again, is it's all about our own perception. It's about how I perceive what I'm seeing of you. It has nothing to do with reality, what your reality is. I'm making it up in my mind. You became an overnight success in my mind. And your level of success is what I consider success to be. Has nothing to do with you. You could be like, I'm only halfway there. I haven't even begun to achieve what I view as success.
Sure.
Well, people are people, and what comes to mind is people forget where they started, how they felt about their first sale, how they felt about their first customer, how grateful they were that it proved I can sell something. Someone's interested in hearing me talk. And then as time goes on for some people, they forget about that. And then they start thinking how good they really are and how important they are to other people. And they've just given up the foundation of what got them where they are. Now they may be able to stay at the top, but they're not going to bring a lot of people up with them.
Yeah.
And they're not going to encourage a lot of people. And what I love about these live streams, and I was talking to a wonderful lady the other day, is this will be here for a long time. What the show we're doing today, the courses Todd created, the speeches Todd gave, are going to be viewed by people he'll never get to see, meet, or know, but he'll know that value continues. And that's the best legacy you can leave somebody, because you want to leave the log pile bigger than you found it, right? You want to feel like every day you paid your dues in a sense. But, you know, if you don't base everything on one thing, you're covered there. Right? Because if this doesn't work, I can do that. You know, if someone doesn't want me, I always look at when someone says no, well, that's a regift to the person who should get it. Right? I mean, and I only have so much of me and what I can do. So the question comes down to who do I want to do it with, and who makes me better for being around. And I couldn't do this every day for an hour. If it wasn't a joy, if it wasn't the highlight of my day instead of my work. And I tell everybody, some people hardly work 8 hours in a day. I work 7 hours in a week, right? If you added Monday through Sunday, and you know how
I want your job.
Well, and that's what I'm hoping to do is onboard people, give them their voice, be seen without filters, without permission, without asking. When do I get on? Who can I do something with? Because then you're starting out with 100% of you, right? And that might diminish over time. But if you already had to make an accommodation, a compromise, and especially if it was a moral thing or an ethical thing, the sweetness of the dessert will never be right. And that's what you'll carry with you. And I think people haven't been in the point where waiting is not the worst thing if you wait long enough to find who you are, what you are, and where you want to be, but build with others and build others up before you need them to build you up. So it's a reciprocal thing. Let me just cover some more comments. I think that it's Beverly. Yes, I think it's something like it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And, you know, I've seen people who became overnight successes and never knew what it was to get there and fell off and never got back.
Sure.
Right? It's the people, it's like, gosh, I'm so lucky to even be a comic. I'm so lucky to even be able to write, you know, and if anybody else likes it, hey, that's already a premium. And I think people put false expectations on themselves, limiting beliefs. They let someone who they don't know, don't care about, say something, and all of a sudden they're done for the day. And, you know, one has to ask themselves these type of questions. So, Todd, you know, coming up on top of the hour, what's your thoughts on the show and the audience and the format? We're so interested.
This was fun. Here's my thought. This was fun. It was rambling in a very good way across interrelated topics about life and success and careers, and that's a beautiful thing. Certainly going to stimulate some thoughts in people that are watching you. You know, we mentioned time a lot in the last 5 minutes, probably, especially you, Don. I got to say, anyone watching, there is no better time than now. There's no perfect time to try something, whether you are talking about a conversation you wish to have with your boss, a project you want to advocate for and kick off, a book you want to write, a piece of art you want to make, a business you want to start, whatever it is. There's no perfect time. Stop lying to yourself. There's no perfect time. What you want to do is associate with many interesting professionals like the three of us are trying to be right now. Get those ideas out there sooner than later, because they always start half-baked before they're really interesting. So why are you waiting on that process? Get started now.
Terrific, Todd. One thing I want to remark, people may say you're fast, but I love the way you elevate your voice and amplify it right? Because
I love it.
yeah, it's not the monotone, you
It's
know.
exciting.
Yeah, and the thing is, people get excited when they're around exciting people,
Correct.
Yes.
right? When you come in dancing and jumping, and everybody starts to, wow, what's going on? And it's the energy that
Yeah.
you bring to the table.
Agreed.
Kelly's just a wonderful person to uh, amplify that energy in others, because she is so giving and thoughtful and kind that it just translates. And that's why these venues are so good, because
Yeah.
you see what is in the world of AI. This is about the only thing you can trust is the now and who you're with and what you're talking about. And to Todd's point, even if you're in the audience, this is the time to ask a question you've been waiting to ask, or come up with a question, because you can have a proactive approach to receiving, right? I would rather say, here's what I'm looking for, and filter the people who weren't sure. Opaqueness serves no one well. So with that, Kelly?
Yeah. So Christy did make a comment on the heels of what Todd said. Don't wait, just do it. Totally true. I mean, and I agree. It's usually half baked when you start, if it's even half baked. I mean, sometimes it's less than half baked, and you've got to figure it out as you go. And collaboration, that's where that all comes in, is learning from others and listening to their input to help you make something that becomes better. But yeah, like, what are you waiting for? We're not guaranteed tomorrow. And I don't mean that as a Debbie Downer, but we're not.
No.
So what are you waiting for? And learn as you go. Doing LinkedIn Lives, that's all I've done is learn by doing it. When I first started, I was like, have no clue what I'm doing, really why I'm doing it, but I'm along for the ride to see what I can learn from it, and learning from people and community and how people respond to community. And what people were really looking for in this particular show was like, it didn't matter what walk of life, what country they're from, where they're from. At our core, we're all the same. We want to have a community where we feel safe, supported, and in particularly just in life, when we feel safe and supported, we are more apt to take higher risk because we feel safe to do so. And then that goes to the whole thing that you were saying earlier, Don, or one of you did, about once you do it once, it's easier to do again. But when you're backed by a community who cheers you along the way and helps you with the failures, which would be, the fail forward, it makes it a lot more fun. And just be curious and ask more questions. And when you get stuck, don't be afraid to ask someone and say, like, hey, I mean, Don and I do this all the time. Like, hey, this is what I interpreted from this situation. What are your thoughts? Like, have some people that you can go to and get feedback. Like, I think that's so important. And yeah, I could listen to Todd all day, and I totally want to hang out with you. Just saying.
Oh, that's great. Hey, I have to give a shout out to Maria as well, because I'm over here making fun of myself, which I'm very good at. Maria from New York says, Todd sounds just fine up here in New York. What are you people talking about?
Right? Right.
Well, let me just introduce a few people. I can't not introduce Christy Howard, who is just a wonderful lady that is co-pilot on the Awesome Journey with Kelly at 1 p.m. Eastern Time Tuesdays. Maria loves Todd's energy. I think everybody does. That you can take that as consensus feedback. Debbie says trifecta trio triumphs together. Thanks, team. A lot of T's. You might have a T tax there. Rambling is not as bad as gambling. Speak up and not out. Thanks for the wow moment. Dennis is our resident rhymer, poet laureate. And Maria says, thoughts of half-baked in the kitchen. Ideas take shape, but some emerge too soon before they're ripe. Half-baked, they stumble into the light. Unfinished thoughts, not quite ready for flight. Well, thank you for that, Rhymer.
Nice.
Again, this has been a tremendous show. I can't thank Todd. Kelly, as always, beautiful audience. I mean, it makes everything easier and better. And I think what really promotes expression and feedback is a safe, trusting environment. Once you share what you think is something people may have a challenge with and everybody supports you, everything from there is up, right? Because you're good enough. And I think most people don't do that. And I know one of the best things people can do is be able to be there just to hear, not to teach all the time, but to listen,
Yes.
share. And what people want to say is, you're okay, we're okay, it's going to be okay. And what Kelly started a long time ago was, if you can't do it, could we do it?
Hmm.
And I think that can make a huge difference in people's lives, because sometimes it's just around the corner. Sometimes that person is going to show up. I know what Todd did today is going to have a lot of value to everybody in the audience. Some people will be going to the library. Some
Yeah.
people might decide to look at, how do I get my course going?
Yeah.
And how to maybe talk among ourselves. In a lot of cases, these LinkedIn Lives are like speaking locally, right? Because it's easy. The people around you are just like you or in the same boat. And then from there, everybody can grow together. So you don't have to find a new group. You just have to find a more advanced, elevated group that continues to blossom together. So with that, come back in 23 hours. Leslie Flowers will be here.
Yay.
Love to see everybody. Thank you. Have a beautiful weekend. Stay safe, and we'll talk soon.